So anyway, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. I'm really excited about our speaker, but I just have a couple quick things to share with you prior. I just wanted to let you know that MRES is doing our boat regatta again on May 20th. And so we'd love to have any or all of you show up out at the lake that day for the races, or if you have any schools in your neighborhood that you think might be interested, Mark and I would be happy to talk to them and help them participate in that race. So this will be our 31st annual race. So it's pretty exciting. The other thing I wanted to share with people that I think is really important is I've been working with the foundation out at Century College, and to make a long story short, they are now providing a free program for people, young people, or anybody that wants to get into solar. And so if there's any interest in that, please give me a call at the MRES number. I'd be happy to send you information and a flyer that explains how to do it and everything. It's a wonderful program, and it's actually being sponsored by Target and working with Century College. So that's great. So getting into our speaker for tonight, Kevin Lawless is a board chair for Hourcar. It's a Twin Cities based car sharing program that's been around for a while. And I'm just really thankful to have him come because I think he's got some amazing information to share with us. So Kevin, please take it from here.
Okay, thanks, Doug. And welcome everyone. And thanks for having me on your show. I'm going to talk about Hourcar. And when I talk about Hourcar, I just want you to know what we're really about is creating green, equitable car sharing services in the Twin Cities. And we're very focused on low income consumers, BIPOC neighborhoods, and so forth. And you'll see that coming out in my discussion. So in terms of what I'm going to talk about, oops, I think my screen froze up a little bit. Oh, there we go. I'm going to cover a couple things. I'm going to give you a quick overview of Hourcar and what car sharing is. And then I'm going to talk about our Evie community car share, which I think is the big story. But I also want to spend some time with our latest program, which is our multifamily electric vehicle car sharing pilot, which we're doing in conjunction with Xcel Energy's multifamily program. And then there should be plenty of time for us to talk about, have a Q&A going at the end. I actually will stop at the end of each of these three sections, though, and maybe we can take a few questions at each of those kind of break points and cover anything really quickly related to the section I just went through. How's that work for everyone?
Sounds great.
All right, Hourcar. As Doug said, we have been around a while, but we've changed quite a bit. So the initial Hourcar started in 2005. That was the initial launch. Some of you may know Mary Morse Marty was the founder of Hourcar. And it started as a program of the Neighborhood Energy Consortium with significant capital support to buy vehicles from the McKnight Foundation. So we built that was built up. I shouldn't say we, because I wasn't around at that point. It was built up to a program of around 50 to 60 vehicles in the 2010 range to 2015 range. In 2017, we became an independent entity. As part of the NEC-CEE merger, Hourcar was spun out and we became an independent nonprofit. with our own budget, our own organization, our own board of directors. I was asked to be on the board, and I don't think it took one meeting, and then I got asked to be the board chair. So that happened pretty quick. But so in the middle of 2017, I think it was June, we became an independent entity. In 2018, we started working on our initial electrification vision. We actually started with some meetings with Xcel Energy. And basically out of those meetings, some grant applications from DOE. What happened is Evie came about, and it turned out to be what we consider to be a robust, renewable electric, equity-focused car sharing program. Seems like I'm missing a word there. And then in 2022, we actually were able to launch Evie in February of last year. So we've been around as Evie just for about a year. And you can see on the right-hand side of your screen, one of our vehicles. It's got the Evie logo on it. And I'll talk a lot more about all of this as we go through the next hour here. But we started out with a planned launch of 175 electric vehicles with 70 charging hubs in the core part of Minneapolis and St. Paul. Later in 2022, in September, we opened up our first site for our multi-family pilot program. And so now here we are in 2023, and I can talk to you a lot more about exactly where we're at as I go through the presentation here. I do want to spend some time, though, talking about different types of car sharing. And we use a hub-based platform for two of our programs, the traditional Hourcar and now the multifamily program. But when we think about those things, when people think about enrolling or becoming a member at Hourcar, they have a lot of questions. And so I just want to cover some of the differences, some of the high level differences, and then I'll talk more specifically about the individual programs on the next slide. But when you think about car sharing, typically what you're going to see from us anyways is that you can enroll, you can become a member, and that makes you eligible to participate in any of our programs. Insurance, maintenance, and cleaning are all part of what we do as a normal course of business, and they're not something that the member needs to worry about as a general rule. I mean, obviously, if they are out driving one of our vehicles and they get a flat tire because they ran through a particularly big pothole, the maintenance piece might become important and they might have a slight role there. But basically, we cover regular maintenance like on the gasoline-powered fleet, we do oil changes and tire changes and so forth. And then we have regularly scheduled cleaning where our staff basically goes to the vehicle rather than the vehicle coming to us and does cleaning on site where the vehicle is. So those are all common services, no matter which program you might participate in, those services are all covered for you. But then we get into the rental process, and this is where a hub-based or a two-way program and a one-way program like Evie differ. So in the hub-based program, you are renting a car from a specific parking spot, actually, and you are going to bring it back when you're done with your rental to that specific parking spot. Evie, the one-way piece, you're basically going to find a car on the street. You can look in the app, but you don't make a reservation. It's more of a on-demand type of purchase decision. So access to the vehicle, typically for all of our programs, basically you can unlock the car through an app or an MTC Go card. And when you end your reservation, it automatically locks the car. In between there's a whole lot of information that we're able to collect. Like on the electric side, we know the status of the battery. We know how many miles have been traveled and so forth. From a parking perspective, like I said earlier, under the hub-based system, and this is what we've traditionally done since 2005, is there are specific spots where we've generally partnered up with a local business to have one or more of their spots in their parking lot specifically dedicated to Hourcar. Under the Evie program, the one-way program, people can pick up a car, drive it to where they want to go as long as it's in our territory, and they can park it at any legal parking spot, on the street. They can also park at one of our charging hubs and plug it in. And with that, they would have the ability to earn a drive credit for being somebody who's helping to keep the car charged up. On the hub-based system, if it's not an electric car, you would park it at the original hub, but there's a charge card in the vehicle for use at any gas station. So when the tank goes, what we ask our members to do is fill the tank anytime it goes below 25%. We have a couple other benefits across our programs. One is a link to the Metro Transit system, so you can use the Go card. You can register with Hourcar. You can then use your Go card for access to vehicles, but it's not a payment mechanism. And then within each vehicle, you also have access. You have a sticker for access to the Minnesota State Parks. On this slide, this is a little more specific to each of the three programs we operate. We have the traditional Hourcar program, we have Evie, and we have the newest program, the multifamily program. The Hourcar program is a two-way rental, as is the multifamily. So you have specific spots you're getting the car from and bringing it back. I won't go through everything on this page, but I think you can maybe we can pause here and people can take a look at this, and perhaps it'll raise questions about the different programs. Doug, maybe you have one.
I was just going to ask on the Hourcar program. I see what kind of vehicles you're running on the other two programs. Is the variety of vehicles, are those still like compact cars, or are they a little bit bigger, or are there any what am I trying to say, like small pickups or stuff like that people can use?
We typically try to keep one pickup in the fleet for people to use, at least one, because we found that people really like having the capability to use such a vehicle for, perhaps they're moving from one apartment to another or going to pick up a piece of furniture, what have you. We do have a few SUVs in that fleet as well, typically. But the reason why I don't really identify them, there's actually quite a few different vehicles, and they can, if you're interested, they can serve a number of different purposes rather than, say, just renting them for a quick trip. So if you need to carry more or you need more people, there's a little bit of variety there so that you have some capacity to handle that. The Evie fleet, we started out with 101 Chevy Bolts back in February. Since then, we've added Nissan Leafs. And then in the multifamily program, we're all Nissan Leafs to start, but we will be adding some Chevy Bolts later on. So currently, we have a total fleet of about 180 cars. So 45 in the Hourcar program, 125 for EV, and we actually have 8 up and running in the multifamily program. But as you asked in the beginning, Doug, we plan to be at a full 175 in the EV fleet by the end of this year, and also to be at 30 vehicles in the multifamily program by that time.
Okay.
In both those programs, everything is electric. And our vision, and I must say it is a vision because we're still really working through, like, how are we going to do this? But our hope is that by the time we get to 2030, that we would have up to 1,000 vehicles combined in our fleet, and we would be all electric.
So Kevin, I have a question on fleet owner for Evie. It's City of St. Paul.
Yes. So good question. I kind of skipped by that. So we on the EV side, we actually don't own the vehicles or the electric infrastructure. And the way things worked was we were applying for a DOE grant, and right at the end of it, they told us that we couldn't apply for it directly, so we had to work through a unit of government. And that's when we formed a very close relationship with St. Paul, and they actually decided they wanted to own the cars. They're actually leased vehicles. And the same was true for the chargers, but they have Minneapolis actually owns the chargers that are in Minneapolis proper. But all of the EV cars currently are owned by the City of St. Paul legally. Yes.
So does that make you a subcontractor for the City of St. Paul? Your nonprofit?
We're a partner with St. Paul. We have a contract. So if you think
Okay.
that makes us a subcontractor,
Okay.
technically, probably, yes.
Okay. And then do you do the airport? Do you have any EV cars at the airport?
We do not. We do not. I'll show you a little bit later. I'll show you a map of our territory. But we have a 35 square mile territory. You can think of it as kind of running from just east of downtown St. Paul to across the I-94 corridor, plus or minus a couple miles on each side of I-94, and then over to Minneapolis, partway down towards the lakes and up partly into North Minneapolis as well.
Kevin, are all the vehicles equipped with like telematics so that you can see where they are and the condition of the batteries and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, good question, Doug. Yes, we outfit them with hardware from a vendor in France, Voulag, and they not only give us telematics, but they are also our control of the car. So their hardware is what allows us to lock the car. It allows it allows members to unlock the car and access it, as well as, for instance, track mileage and battery, what condition the battery is. And we actually automatically, at some level, I think it's 20% currently, we automatically take cars when a reservation ends and the battery is at a low level, we take it out of service so that it can't be accessed by members until it gets charged up. Hopefully, members, when the charge is low and their rentals at one of the charging hubs in the Evie spot network, it's called, and hook the charger up so that it charges pretty quickly.
You mentioned a couple times members, so the prices are for actual usage of the vehicle. And what about the membership side?
Yeah, membership is, and to be honest, Doug, I was trying to avoid a discussion about specific rate plans because they can get pretty complicated. But we have our base rates. We have an Access Plus rate plan for low income consumers, which you would see at the bottom of the average pricing ranges there. And then there are membership fees, which oftentimes in some of the programs, the membership fee is really more like a drive credit. So you're paying monthly, and then if it's $7 a month, you might get a $7 or $5 drive credit.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a prepay almost.
Okay.
Other questions? Okay, I'm going to move quickly on to Evie. So, more technically, it's Evie Community Car Share. We launched this in about a year ago. We have 123. I think this is just slightly a little bit ago. I think we're up to 125 now, and we expect to be at 175 at the end of this year. It's a one-way car share service. It's currently supported by 41 charging stations. Each of the charging stations have 4 ports. 2 of the ports are reserved for Hourcar vehicles or EV vehicles, and the other 2 ports are open to the public for general charging. So we've not only added chargers directly to support our fleet, but we've also greatly enhanced the number of charging stations in the core Twin Cities area. 90% of the 35 square mile service area serves our targeted audience, which is predominantly low income, racially diverse, or both. And that's our intent as a car share service, the car share organization in general. I'm gonna flip screens here. So you might lose me for a moment. Can you see this map?
No.
No?
Yes.
Yep. Now it's there.
Now you can. Okay. So the dark black line outlines our current EV territory. The green dots indicate charging hubs in Minneapolis that are in service. The blue ones are the in-service charging hubs in St. Paul. And then all the yellow ones are planned for this year. So at the end, we'll have 70 charging hubs. And I do want to say, for those of you who are who know EVs a little bit, most of our charging hubs are level 2 chargers. But we will have 10 charging hubs that have a level 3 charger in them when we're done. So we'll have some fast charging capability, which will really help us as the fleet operator to keep the cars in service and so forth. So let me see if I can make this a little broader.
Kevin, who is the fleet operator?
We are the fleet operator, Hourcar. So we operate the fleet of John, is your question the charging stations or the vehicles?
Well, you refer to yourself as a fleet operator. It's kind of like Nixon talking about himself as the person who holds his office.
Yeah, so, well, no, our car is the fleet operator, and we operate the fleet. We own the systems in the vehicles. We're responsible. We have a contract with the cities to, basically, we have a contract with the city of St. Paul, who then has a contract with Minneapolis. But we provide services, we provide the system so that people can access the cars and rent them. We're responsible for keeping the vehicles running, and all of those things. The charging hubs are actually owned by St. Paul and Minneapolis, and I believe they have contracts with Zeph Energy to maintain those.
Kevin, how big is your staff to take care of all this?
We're up to somewhere around 30, I think.
Okay.
And when we spun out, and to give you an idea of growth, when we spun out in 2017, we had 9 employees. So we've grown quite a bit. We have a fleet operations staff who get really busy in the winter when we have to move cars around due to the plowing restrictions.
Yeah.
And or just plain shoveling them out in some circumstances. So they get really busy. Hopefully in the summer, we're a lot less busy in that sense. And right. And so they're also responsible, like I said, if an electric vehicle gets parked and it's got a low charge, we take it out of service. They have to go out and get it to a charger if it's not at one already. So there's a lot.
How do they do that?
How do they do that?
How do they do that, Kevin? Yeah,
What do
how
you
do they
mean?
transport the car?
Well, the charge would not be at 0, and because of the density of the charging hubs, they're typically pretty close. So often it's just like a mile or less to get to the nearest charging hub.
Have you guys run into a situation where you've had to, flatbed something to a charging station?
Not that I know of, but we're familiar with that process because we do, particularly in the winter, our members do have accidents. So.
Yeah.
So Kevin, you send out a 2-person team to where the car is located with a low charge, and then one person drives it to the charging hub?
We may do it that way. Sometimes particularly in better weather, John, we may have people on bikes doing that. And again, it kind of varies depending on how many vehicles at any given time we need to manage in some way. So, I mean, if we just have one vehicle that needs to get to a charging hub, yeah, that's pretty quick. Does that help? Okay.
Yes, that is a question I've asked myself numerous times. How do you transport the car? And you just explained that. And I love that you're depending upon your employees to bike back to wherever they're headed.
Yeah, so that I mean, we're still working through this, John, to be honest. This is our first year. It's our first winter. I mean, and to be honest, though, we're pretty experienced with winter conditions, having, with our organization, having worked with car sharing for almost 20 years now. We're pretty familiar with what happens in Minneapolis and St. Paul when there's a big snowstorm, for instance. But there are some new things with electric cars that we're still learning it to some extent. Okay, I want to talk about Evie results real quick. Our 6-month report came out I think it came out in August or September. We'll have a full year report out in a month or two. But we logged 25,000 trips, almost 250,000 miles in the first 6 months. We really hit our target market really well. And we track greenhouse gas emissions as well. You can go to this link, and I think Doug said this report will get posted up on your MRES website, so you'll be able to access it if you want. But you can go to evcarshare.com and look it up as well. And then through the end of 2022, we had almost 57,000 trips, 600,000 miles. And again, we're very strongly hitting, our target audience. And we have, in our contract with the city of St. Paul, we have some specific goals related to this. So, we really want to stay on track there. What do we attribute these results with? I mean, we have really strong partnerships. It probably was good for us to have to partner up with the city of St. Paul in order to access the DOE money for the vehicles and the chargers, because I think it really broadened and strengthened the organization, but it also has put the city of St. Paul in particular, but also Minneapolis, kind of on the hook for helping to market the program. Before we launched, before we even applied for money, we did a community engagement project where we worked with local organizations to help decide which neighborhoods we were going to be in, where we were going to place cars, where the charging hubs would go, and so forth. And then from a pricing standpoint, we're pretty inexpensive compared to other car share services across the country. And our Access Plus, which is our low income rate structure, is really we believe quite manageable for somebody who maybe needs a car once a week, a few times a month, and so forth. And that's all led to what we think are strong results. In the future, Evie, like I said, is going to go to 175 vehicles this year. We expect all the charging stations to be in. We're going to start a community engagement project because we We do have funding to expand the service into St. Paul's East Side. And we expect that by the time we get to 2025, the EV fleet will be up to at least 220 vehicles, and we'll have more charging stations as well. So other questions on EV? Am I covering the right stuff? Am I clear enough?
Kevin, what do you get a lot of interest from other cities, or what are other cities doing the same thing? Or
we're the largest renewable based car sharing service in North America, and there are others, Doug, but they're typically much smaller.
okay.
Like Boston has one, Portland, Oregon has one, but typically the other ones are often like 5 or 10 vehicles kind of range. So they're typically quite a bit smaller. We do get asked about our service, what we do quite a bit. We've started going to a few national type events and present there. We're really not focused on expanding outside the Twin Cities right now because we think there's a long ways to go. Expansion into the suburbs, further expansion in the core Minneapolis, St. Paul cities. And we do believe that in order to make this work, you have to, as a organization, we have to have a fairly dense network of vehicles and charging stations available.
Bill, go ahead.
Thank you, Kevin. I've been on the Red Wing Sustainability Commission for 2 terms for 6 years, and before I left, I put a bug in their ear about looking at the EV car share as something possibly to further the goals of equitable transportation in city of Red Wing. And as I'm listening to the question and answer here, I got to ask you, have you thought about marketing your technology so that other organizations could use what you've broken trail with here and use your technology and run their own system? Then you wouldn't have to manage that fleet, but others could take advantage of your technology.
Yeah, I think, Bill, that's a good question, and it's one that particularly on the board we discuss like all the time. The technology is purchasable from VULOG, so anybody can go and buy it and install it in cars. Our belief is that this is a total system approach, in the sense that it's the technology, it's the type of vehicles, it's the work processes around maintaining, cleaning, keeping cars charged up. And so it's not that somebody else can't do it. We've thought about doing what I would call kind of more of a consulting approach to help people move, to help other cities move in that direction. We did have a fleet, not electric, but we did have a gas fleet for about 4 years in Rochester, a small one. But we just found that with the rollout of Evie and the multifamily program, it was really hard to expand beyond, our staff beyond the Twin Cities area. And we're just not ready for that yet. But if Red Wing wants to talk to us. I'm sure Paul Schrader would be glad to talk to them.
Kevin, are you going to talk more about the multi-unit dwelling program you're running? That sounds very
Yes.
intriguing to me at a senior facility.
Ha, John, I thought you would never ask. So let's move on to multifamily. I know we don't have unlimited time here. So the multifamily car sharing, I'll go through this quicker because it's currently smaller, but we have a lot of hope that in some ways the traditional Hourcar program and the multifamily program in the medium run, like say over the next 2 to 3 years, that we'll actually merge those two programs and they will become one. So the multifamily project, and as I said earlier, we just got the first site up and running in September. The intent of the pilot project is to have 25 sites at multifamily dwelling units. It was originally intended to be by the end of this year. We do not believe we will make that timeline, and I'll talk in a minute about why. Level 2 charging infrastructure, which basically, I mean, in some sense, we're really partnering with Excel's multifamily program, and they would install and maintain the infrastructure. And then the electric vehicle car sharing service would be operated by Hourcar, the organization. So that's kind of the high level of the program. So again, we would install a 2-port charger with 2 vehicles available for use at multifamily sites, and those would be 2-way rentals, as I said earlier on. So people would rent them from that specific site and bring them back to that site at the end of their rental. Landlords, they have charging concerns. I think anybody who's been in the multifamily world understands that. Often the expense of getting chargers installed and the complications of it are somewhat more than they want to handle. But under the Excel side of the program, they cover the installation and charger cost. And then landlords also would be concerned about whether or not there'd be enough usage. But the nice thing about partnering with us is that we know how to get customers enrolled, and there's an immediate customer, so to speak, for their charging station in the Hourcar membership. We did have supply chain delivery issues, probably no surprise to anybody who's listened to the news the last few years. We had expected that we would have 6 hubs open by last summer, and that we would have 25 hubs open by the end of this year. We think the reality of that is we have 4 charging hubs available today, and we have 2 more that are very close to being ready to go, but the full round of 25 probably won't be in place until the end of next year, till sometime late next year. A lot of reasons. I mean, we couldn't get chargers for a while. We did get the cars, which was really interesting. And then on the Excel side, there's some metering and cabinetry, and on the Zeph side, that just some of the parts to really finish off the charging hubs was really slow to come in. This is a map of where our multifamily sites are currently. Maya Commons was the first one. Timber and Tie, Garden Terrace, And I think Seasons Park are the 4 that are open today. And then we have 2 more, as I said, we have 2 more coming pretty quickly. The big thing for us is, for instance, these ones that are pretty much embedded within our Evie and Hourcar territory. Once we got these sites open, there was not only plenty of people at the sites who wanted to rent them, but we had members in the surrounding neighborhood who really wanted to rent vehicles too, because we actually, late last year, we're going through a period where on a 2-way rental basis, we didn't have enough cars, actually. So, and so when these sites opened up, they very quickly went to like 15 hours a day of rental on average. We're really interested to see these sites that are like in the first ring suburbs, to see how they're going to perform, because they're farther away from our current membership. And we actually are going to need to recruit more members in the surrounding area and at the multifamily sites themselves. But performance has been pretty good. The red, the darker orange compared to the gold ones, we're trying to show a comparison here of performance for a 6-week period. Of the hourly usage, and you can see that they're comparing pretty reasonably well with places where we had the traditional Hourcar program operating. Over time, as we open up more sites, we're seeing growth, but we also see the impact of winter weather, particularly in late December and January. And then again, this is just a partial month in March. So, but we have our 4th site up, and we're hoping we're going to see pretty good growth in overall usage pretty quickly. So, that was a pretty quick run through the multifamily program. Any questions?
Kevin, I've got one. In your economic analysis on this, do you know what kind of life cycle you plugged in for the electric vehicles? Is it like 5 years, or do you know?
Yeah, that's one of those issues, Doug, that we've kind of, I would say we've deferred somewhat.
Okay.
And we want to see how the vehicles perform under the conditions that that our fleet actually operates in. We're certainly hopeful the vehicles will last, 5 years, but we also have to watch what happens to their mileage. And, early indications are that we might get to pretty high mileage levels, and maybe even in less than 5 years. So, and we're starting some pretty intensive financial work looking at that and what the scenarios might look like. So we hope to know more in the next, let's say, 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's going to be the vehicle plus the battery side of it, like you say. So,
yeah, well, I think that might be true, but I think it's also interesting, if you look at the hybrid market, which has been around for quite some time. In the early days of that hybrid market, people were really concerned about the replacement costs of their batteries, and yet not that many hybrid vehicles have actually needed to replace their batteries. So, it's hard to tell. So at this point, so I think we all have a lot to learn about what the battery performance is actually going to turn out to be.
Yeah. We have a
Kevin,
celebrity online with us. Yuko, what's your question?
Oh,
Oh
sure.
yeah. Thanks for taking my comment here. First of all, congratulations. This is really awesome to see all the
Yeah.
numbers that you guys are doing. This is just fabulous performance
Thank you.
overall. I had a minor role in when our car was started. I was did the technical consulting for it at 2004, 2005 era when it was started. So I was a little bit involved when we got the first. We were really excited about getting the first Toyota Priuses. The second generation came out. We're like, yeah, these are great cars to start with, this one. And now you guys are in totally different level with it. And especially the amount of usage that you're getting for these cars is really impressive. And it's great to hear that you're seeing a lot of miles driven, because more miles EVs are driven, the better economic sense they make in every level. So I think this is great to hear these numbers. So yeah, thanks for doing this, and thanks for speaking. This is really, really cool.
No, you're welcome, and thank you for the compliments. I'll take those back to the organization for sure. You know, our success is really due to some really strong collaboration. And, you know, as I said earlier, we did quite a bit of collaboration with local community organizations, and to some extent with the city councils in Minneapolis and St. Paul. But we have some organizations, McKnight Foundation, for instance, has supported us since 2005. You know, without them, our car would have never survived to get to the electric vehicle revolution. So, and then they provided seed money for us to do the initial planning of what became Evie. The cities have been terrific partners, and they really stepped up. Russ Stark and his team at the city of St. Paul have just been amazing, both in terms of getting things done, but also just such strong supporters. Excel has funded all the make-ready work for all the charging in Evie, and you know, and they do even more for the multifamily program. The American Lung Association, East Metro Strong, have been really good partners too. 3M, GM, Bloomberg, they've all given us grants to help us along the way with specific, in some cases, specific pieces of work that needed to be done. So we've had really strong partnerships, and that's part of how we got to it. And I think, Bill, in going back to your question about Red Wing, this really, in some sense, is the core of how to make it work. You got to have the local relationships and partners, including the cities, to really make this work, because there's, you know, if you want to start digging up concrete and putting in charging stations, you got to convince a lot of people that that's the right thing to do. You know, so Excel has put in millions of dollars to support the charging infrastructure. DOE has provided quite a bit of money, millions of dollars for the vehicles and the chargers themselves. And we're trying to get to the point where we can self-fund things going forward. We're not there yet, but we're hoping to get there in the next couple of years.
Kevin, you do have one question in the chat.
I was just going to bring that one up. How do the rates for electric cars compare to gas?
Yeah, so we actually We actually, if I'll go back to this chart, which overviews the three programs, Hourcar and multifamily are basically using the same rates. The rates are lower for those two programs than for Evie, but that has less to do with gas or electric, and a lot more to do with the fact that Evie is a one-way, and people rent them for shorter periods of time. So they're not quite the same program. So what we believe is there's a lot of complementary support across these programs, even though there might be different rate structures. Does that help? Other questions? Yeah, I kind of come back to this chart, to this table, because it kind of contains a lot of the detail. So,
Kevin, our seniors facility is expanding to another building, and they're installing EV charging infrastructure. I'll contact you later about. I would really love to chat with you about adding EV to our facility.
yeah, I think what you would probably want, John, is the multifamily program, because I think you're likely gonna want the vehicles, when people use them, to come back to the building or to the set of buildings, as opposed to being left somewhere else, which with EV would happen because it's a one-way program. But yes, let's talk. I think you have my contact information.
I do, thank you.
And then Anna Crouch is our program manager for the multifamily program. And, we're still taking applications to get through the first 25 sites that go up in that program. Other questions?
Terry, I see that you had your hand up for a minute. Do you still have a question?
It may have been covered earlier. I got on a little late. I apologize. How is the insurance covered? And is there a change? Is there a different cost? Have you found a different cost for insurance across the different systems?
We pay for the insurance, and so that's embedded in these prices. And what else do I want to say? We feel like we get a pretty good deal on insurance because we're a nonprofit, but it's always a point of concern for us going forward, and I think particularly with Evie, we may have more drivers now in the membership that are less experienced drivers and may get themselves or their vehicles in a little more trouble than average. So
I was going to ask if there's also a difference in drivers that are familiar with EVs versus those that aren't, if there's, let's say, more accidents with people, but again, it might be a younger driver that maybe would drive an EV or something. I just wondered if there's a difference there.
Yeah, we haven't. Yeah, and it's kind of hard for us to say at this point, and particularly as we've gone through the winter here. Obviously, driving conditions have been significantly worse than they were before the winter. So this is our first full winter with Evie. And maybe as we come out of the winter, we'll have a little bit better handle on what that looks like, that kind of information looks like. but we don't have it right now.
Thank you.
Oh, this has been great, Kevin. Man, what I definitely support Yuka's comment. This is a wonderful program. And I mean, to me, I'm just so proud to think that we've got it going on here in the Twin Cities. I mean, it's just, you know, like we're ahead of the curve on things. So go ahead.
Yeah, Doug, thank you for the feedback and the compliments. You know, I think we're really fortunate here in a lot of ways. One is as the Twin Cities, we had an existing service on which to build the electric side on. And I don't think that exists in most other large, even medium or small North American cities, or at least in the US. Toronto has quite a large car sharing service there. Their rates are a lot higher than ours. But we've modeled some of Evie after them because they've apparently had quite good success. And car sharing services, like say 5 years ago, they were all attached to auto manufacturers who were what I would call testing the market, like Car2Go and Zipcar and some of the others. You know, got out of the market or have gotten out of the market. So there continues to be you know, a gap here where we think car sharing can really help people out. But it's probably not something yet that somebody like a Ford or a GM or Lyft or the car rental companies, you know, really see as a money-making venture. We tend to believe this is very much a public-private nonprofit. It's a place where if you can get the collaboration and the understanding of what we're trying to make happen and who we're trying to make it happen for, you have a lot better sense capability of succeeding.
Yeah.
And I don't think we have that in other cities across the country yet.
I have one final question. Do you see anything in the recent federal legislation, IRA and all the various ones, that would do anything to complement your program or allow you to do some additional things?
Yes. And in fact, something, I think $2.5 billion for community charging just opened up at DOE Wednesday, I think it was, of this week. And we are intending to look at that very closely and making a proposal for expansion.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to hear.
Yes, I think there's two things there. One is, you know, directly things that we can do, you know, that we could apply, but I think also not only the Inflation Reduction Act, but the Infrastructure Act before that. I mean, they're really going to help the charging infrastructure get built out. And whether it's enough, we would probably all say no, but it's going to be a lot more than it has been and is currently, and that will help us as well.
Hey, just out of curiosity, I was looking at this picture in the background, St. Paul. I didn't notice, is there a location over at the state capitol for?
Well, let's go look at the map. Okay, I'll get out of here and go back to the map and can take a look at how close we are. We aren't right at the capital, but we have some locations, in the vicinity.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I was just curious, you know, so that
And
legislators could use it.
yeah, right. Not all of them are in place yet. The yellow ones yet aren't in place. So there's, I think by the end of this year, there'll be more. So
Yeah.
that should help.
Well, this has been very informative. Any other final questions before we let Kevin go? Thank you so much, Kevin. This has been great. We really appreciate, I mean, really good information and stuff that we can share with others, you know, so.
Yep.
And Doug, this will be posted on the MRES website?
Yes, good question, John. All of our meetings are videotaped. You know, we used to do it in person at the church, but now everything is on Zoom. And thanks to Ellie and the work she's doing, most of these talks get posted in about 30 days. And so, you know, feel free to direct people to the MRES YouTube site, which is indicated, I think, on our website. And, it's great information. I mean, it goes back now for almost 14 years. Probably hundreds and some talks and various topics. And as Kevin was talking, I was thinking of Kim Havey talking from the city of Minneapolis, how they have put together this whole thing of our cars and bicycles and mass transit and everything, trying to make it more convenient for people to move around the cities. And I mean, this program just fits in so beautifully. So anyway, thank you all.
Thank you.
MRES people will be moving on to a board meeting in about 15 minutes. So thank you all for coming. And I'm going to have a speaker next month that will be talking about a net zero energy homes. And so that should be very interesting. He is one of the leading people in the United States to do that type of work. So anyway, thanks again, Kevin. We really appreciate it. And until better paid, as they say, thank you.
Thanks again for everybody paying attention and asking questions, and your comments and compliments are we're very grateful to hear them. Thank you.
Yeah, and if we can do anything to help get the word out there, feel free to reach out to MRES too.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.